Alrighty, boys. I think we are live. Livingston Live is ready to go. Guys at home, ladies, thank you for joining us for Livingston Live. We're excited to be here. My name's Nick Barr. I work here at Livingston Lures, and joining me as a co-host for tonight is Travis Moran from Lucky Tackle Box. Thank you for joining us for Livingston Live. We're excited to be here. My name's... You guys hear me there okay?
I hear you.
Perfect, perfect. Travis, how's it going, my man?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to hear what Randy's got to tell us tonight, man. This is a treat for not only the viewers but also for me. I got plenty of questions to learn and go try out here on the West Coast as well.
Hey, perfect. Everyone wants to learn how to become a better crankbait fisherman. That is a fact. Now, everyone, join us. Randy Howell, 2014 Bassmaster Classic champion. Everyone give him a big round of applause, everyone. Randy, how's it going?
Hey, guys. Good to see y'all tonight. How y'all doing? Y'all already full of dinner and ready to talk fishing tonight?
I think everyone is. Everyone's been itching for this seminar to start and learn a little bit about how you can become a better crankbait fisherman. Specifically, talking pre-spawn crankbaits, Randy. So, you know, I mean, first off, before we even get started, you know, how are things going there? You're moving into Lake Guntersville, you know, getting the house built and everything. You're out there, you know, how's the fishing been at Guntersville?
Man, I tell you, this is the show season. A lot of guys are watching this tonight. We appreciate everybody joining. It's real humbling just to say, you know, have guys sign up to want to listen to me talk on a webinar like this. I really appreciate it. And just seeing a lot of people at shows lately, everybody's excited. At seminars this year, ready to go fishing. We've had a lot of warm spells in between the cold spells, and just enough to tease you into wanting to go fishing. And I've been working so much, I've only got to fish a couple hours really in the last 3 weeks. So not much fishing yet, but I'm fired up. I've been catching a lot of fish in the seminar tanks at the shows, Bass Pro Shops, and places like that. So I'm going to be ready, man. I'm excited. The Classic's coming in like 40 days or something, maybe less than 40 days. So it's coming close, and we're going to be ready.
That's fantastic. I know people on social media were laughing at you calling your shot there at Guntersville. It was, over Christmas time, you and Lake are out there calling your shot on Guntersville.
Oh, man, yeah, that's the last good fishing trip I got to go on during that little break. We had a flood here, and it was warm weather, warm water. Man, we found them schooled up on several points and places and just catching them on the 2.0 Coffin Bill and the 1.5, and they were just eating it up shallow. And I'm telling you, current piles them up on Guntersville and most lakes, but especially the Tennessee River lakes. So we had a good time.
That's fantastic, Randy. That's fantastic. Well, hey, you know what? People are here to learn how to become better crankbait fishermen, pre-spawn tactics. I mean, why is crankbaiting your favorite pre-spawn tactic?
Well, you know, crankbait, you know, is always been one of my favorite techniques, period. You know, I fish now. I'm 42 years old, started right out of high school, fished a lot of years, and I've learned. I mean, I'm a student of the game, and that's why I say this is the most humbling sport. Anybody listening to me right now, if you don't believe it, the next time you go out, you might zero, and then you will believe it, because that's the way this sport is. It'll put you as a hero or a zero, so you got to always be learning. Y'all got to always be looking for ways to get better and outsmart fish, and that's my goal. And so I've studied crankbait fishing for my whole career, and as a sport with bass and the Elite Series and all that, consistency matters a lot. And catching 5 fish every day is a big, big key, and that's the way you make a living out here. That's the way you get sponsors, the way you make the Classic. I've been blessed to make 14 Classics now out of the last 19 years or so, and a lot of my success has come on shallow crankbaits and medium diving crankbaits. You know, some on deep divers, but for the most part, shallow and medium depth has put more limits in my boat than anything else by far over the years. So that's why, you know, I feel like I can, you know, cut the learning curve down for a lot of folks tonight. You know, some of the stuff may be simple, you might already know it, but a lot of times the devil's in the details, and the little bitty things that we do, that we learn from hours and hours and hours on the water, is what separates us from catching 3 fish versus 5 fish and getting a check, or missing the Classic or making the Classic. So that's important.
Most definitely.
Yeah, your question though, pre-spawn, this time of the year, right on up from really December all the way through March, depending on what part of the country you're in. Pre-spawn is has a wide variety of times, but that's the time of year that fish are most active. They're moving a lot. They're grouping up and they're making moves into shallow water. They're roaming drop-offs and they're roaming flats and they're looking for food because it's the pre-spawn season. They're going to spawn soon. They don't really eat much when they're spawning, so that's the time they're most vulnerable, really, to be caught with reaction baits, and that's why pre-spawn is my favorite time of year for crankbait.
Nice. Yeah, those fish get real aggressive and are looking to feed before going to the bed. Well, talking about what kind of baits you specifically like throwing, I mean, what are some of your favorite baits to throw during that pre-spawn time?
Well, I start out kind of by, I've got a lot of favorites. I got a pile of them laying over here beside me right now, but in my box. But it all depends on, I'm trying to answer these questions the best I can, because somebody like Travis in California and somebody in Minnesota or somebody in New York or Florida, it's going to be different in times of the year. But for the most part, first you got to figure out what the depth range that the lake or river you're going to fish is, the depth range that the fish are going to be in. And so when I go to somewhere new, especially, I'll have the 1.5, coffin bill tied on a 2.0. I'll have the Howler and the Howler Plus on, the Howler Square Bill. I'll have one of everything on, and I'll have 10 or 12 Daiwa rods laying on the deck ready for, with all the different crankbait depths and a couple of the key colors, and I always go back to my confidence colors and the regional colors and the seasonal colors. Start with that, keep it simple, and then I get on the water and you just start, trying to one depth to the next depth to the next depth until you get a bite or two, and then that starts putting that puzzle together. Then you start chasing that bite and that pattern, and you hope to put something together, and that's what our 3 days of practice are for. And a lot of times it takes that, full 3 days before you start to hone it down to one type of bait or one depth range, one color, whatever, but that's always the goal. So that's why you got to try all those different colors and sizes until you figure it out, and then you run with it. That's always good. If you only see 3 or 4 rods on my deck, I'm going to catch them, because that's rare to ever cut my rods down to that minimum, of amount, but that's when you're going to do good, once you got it figured out like that.
Nice, getting it dialed in. Well, people always want to know, what is the best setup for throwing crankbaits, especially, pre-spawn throwing like our primetime 1.5 or a Howler. What are a couple different rod and reel setups that you use that, increase your hookups and keep those fish pinned?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's one that I have spent, like I said before, years and years of trying everybody's, advice, everybody's technique, other pros over the year. When I was younger, I'd go to seminars. I'd listen to all the older guys that are kind of retired. A lot of them now. Some of them are still fishing, and I'd learn from everybody, and then I'd try it myself. And I found over the years, as lures have progressed, hooks have gotten better, lines, rods, reels, everything has gotten better over the years. So things have changed a lot, and I've used a lot of stuff and lost a lot of fish in my life, and really the last 5 to 6 years, I've gotten it where I get a pretty good, hook to landing ratio on crankbaits, and it's got a lot to do with the whole setup, not just one thing. It starts first with the rod. You got to have, there's a lot of guys that argue with me and say that glass rods are the way to go, and if you like a glass rod and you do good with it, you just keep on fishing it, and it's nothing wrong with a glass rod. But my experience, I like a lightweight graphite rod with a shorter handle, and I designed one of these. I had a homemade rod that was just a homemade blank for years. That was an inshore saltwater fishing rod. It had a cork handle, 7 foot, medium light, and it was a popping rod, fast action. When I got on with Daiwa years ago, I gave it to the Japanese guys at Daiwa, and I said, "Can you make a rod like this, in your Daiwa brand?" And it took them 2 years before they finally got it to me, and that's when the Tatula rod line came out, right at the Classic, and that's the rod that I won the Classic on. And that is by far the best rod. So simple, $149.95, inexpensive rod. They make a Steve's rod I use a lot of that's $500 or $600 rod, but this $150 Tatula, everybody can buy it. And it's a 7 foot medium light. It's got an 8.5 inch handle, so it's a little shorter. I've actually got it sitting right here, And if I put it up in the camera, you see that 8.5-inch handle right there, instead of a great big long, 10-inch handle on a rod, makes a big difference. When I'm holding that rod close to my body and I'm cranking that rod and I'm going back and forth across my body with it, a long rod, you can't hold it close to you good enough under your arm and kind of under. I like to cradle it right here. I don't want it going all the way out to my elbow. I want it right here, so I've got my hand on it and I can feel it. And the graphite is so sensitive, and that's what you need. You need to feel the bait as it's pulling up onto a rock, or it's pulling up on a side of a bridge piling, or if it's coming up on a stump or a brush pile. You want to know what the bait's doing all the time. When you got a glass rod, glass eliminates the sensitivity, so you can't feel a glass rod. That's why a lot of guys got into glass cranking for deep divers, because they don't want to take the bait away from the fish. But in my opinion, my theory is, if I feel the fish before it even gets on there, I mean, I can literally reel that bait and I can feel that bait. I can feel the fish as he's biting the bait, not just after he's on there. I mean, I feel it sometimes, especially when you get in the zone and they're biting good, like in the classic, right as that fish is loading up on it. And that 7-foot length is for the casting distance. It's not too long, not too short. And then the medium is that little meat backbone in the midsection, but the light tip is what allows that rod to load up, and that parabolic load. And that's when those hooks get in the fish's mouth, and then the backbone of that medium hooks them good. So that rod is first, and then fluorocarbon line makes all the difference in the world now. All of us crank with fluorocarbon. I use Gamma. Gamma is one of the strongest, I think, best fluorocarbon you can buy, and it's a heavy, big diameter, and I crank with 12-pound Gamma just about all the time. The Gamma Edge fluorocarbon. I use 14 if I'm cranking a little bit shallower, and 10 if I'm trying to get deeper. But 10, 12, 14, those three sizes. And then the real 6.3 or 7.3, those two retrieves. But I prefer a faster retrieve, and I'll probably talk about that some more later. But a faster retrieve allows me to continue to take the slack out of that bait when the fish bites it. So when that fish bites it, I see a lot of people that I've fished with over the years, and people that even I see now that fish slow reel still, fish a 5-1 retrieve or 4-5, 4-7, stuff like that. When you're cranking a square bill or a Howell or that style bait, and that fish bites the bait and you immediately load up, you see people get over their shoulder like this, and they're trying to catch up and get that hook set. And that fast reel, the 7.3 retrieve reel, I've got instant control on that fish. As soon as I feel that fish, I load up. You'll see me take my arm out to the side, and I load up on that fish. And when I start cranking, that's setting the hook. When I'm cranking, digging like that, that reel has got so much power that it's pulling the hooks into that fish with that rod at the same time. So it's a combination of all that. Plus, then the rod, reel, line, all that, but the low stretch of the fluorocarbon line, but then it gets down to the hooks, and that's another big deal. And you know, Nick, more than anybody, because you hear me all the time, I'm big on hooks. With Livingston, we try to put the best premium hooks, and I've used Daiichi for years. I use a lot of brand hooks over the years and experimented with, and specialty hooks. Right now, I'll still use a specialty hook, sometimes somebody else's if we don't have that style, but Daiichi hooks. And not just the Daiichi hook, but the 2X strong hook. I'm big on the 2X strong, and I have to give this to Kevin Van Dam. I learned this from Kevin Van Dam, because when he did an article several years ago, and when he started believing in the 2X strong hooks and on his particular brand, and he made me start thinking, and I started thinking, losing fish on crankbaits, losing fish a lot of times pulling by the boat, or not really bending your hooks, and they would look like nothing was wrong with my hooks, and they were sharp, but I'd still lose fish. So when I checked, Daiichi had a 2X strong hook, so I started putting those on my baits. I mean, lo and behold, I started hooking and landing. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood, because you never want to get cocky or confident and say you don't ever lose one on a crankbait. That's when it happened. But in that classic, I caught probably 100 bass that day, and I never even lost one that day. And I can't even look back over the last several years when I'm cranking these style of crankbaits that I really can ever add up on one hand how many of losing fish that ever cost me anything in the tournament. And that says a lot, as much as we do it. And I've lost plenty of fish in other ways, but that's one way that I don't lose many with it. And it's got a lot to do with that 2X strong hook. It doesn't flex. So when that fish gets that hook and it turns, that bait, it goes in their mouth, you got a split second that they explode away as you pull into them. And if that hook is soft and it flexes just enough, it's just enough for that fish to release and never get that hook to bury in him. But if it's a stiff 2X hook or strong, no flex hook, it goes, penetrates right in there. And I'm telling you, I believe it 100%, and I've seen it time and time again. So that's the setup. Hook is from the front to the back. You got to have it all right if you want to be as close to 100% as you can be.
It's all about eliminating those variables of those fish swiping at a bait. But something that's been helping you get, stronger bites and these fish attacking lure a crankbait more aggressively, is EBS technology, electronic bait fish sound technology, the hallmark of Livingston lures. And really a lot of people ask, how does EBS technology give you a confident advantage? A lot of people trying it out for the first time. How does it give you that advantage?
Well, I'm going to tell my story. It's like I tell, if anybody's listening tonight that watched any seminars with me the last couple of years at Bass Pro Shops or any of the outdoor shows or anywhere like that, I'll usually tell this story because this is the honest God truth. And anybody that knows me well, my integrity, I work hard to be, always be honest and tell and do everything right by the book. And I met Fred, Basile, Eric, those guys started Livingston Lures, and Robert. I met them at the Classic practice in December of 2012 at Grand Lake, where we're about to go to. I met them at a gas station, and how ironic that was. I met them. They gave me some samples. I didn't know anything about Livingston Lures, and they told me about the technology and the sound, and I was intrigued by the sound because like I say, I'm a student of the game. I want to get better. I don't want to do the same old thing every day like everybody else is doing. If I can be better, give me something to help me be better. I'm not hard-headed. So they give me these baits, and I'm like everybody. When you first hear something electronic, you think, well, I wonder if that's a gimmick, or I wonder if that's an infomercial kind of deal. I said, but I'm always going to try something. I bought everything that anybody's ever sold in fishing one time, and if it worked, I kept buying it. If I didn't, then I didn't. But I took these baits, and I found out if I could take them, I'd take them to my Bass Pro Shop seminar tank with my buddies in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'd put them in the tank where the fish are when I do my shows at, and I know how fish react in tanks, and I know how they respond to baits and how they don't, because I've done it for many years. So I got in there to that tank right away, put the baits in, and as the saying we got, the difference is clear. The clear bait has no paint on it. We show with the electronics inside. I took a clear Pro Ripper, which is our lipless crankbait. And because Robert had told me this, Robert showed me a video. He said, go take it, look at it in the tank, look how these fish respond. So I took it to my tank. I dropped a regular, lipless crankbait in there first for myself, let it fall, let it lay on the bottom. Fish never responded, never did anything, of course, because it's just sitting there dead, no sound. I took the Livingston with no paint, no hooks, just sound, threw it in there and let it sink to the bottom. Totally skeptical as I'm doing it. And then when it sunk to the bottom in 2 to 4 seconds, every bass, catfish, crappie, striper, brim, every fish in the tank was turning at attention, looking at the bait, and then they're swimming toward it. It's just like if you whistle to your dog across the room and he's asleep, and you go, whistle at him, and he turns his head and he comes running to you. That's what the fish did in the tank. And as soon as I saw that, my heart, raced fast because the adrenaline surged, because I thought, oh my gosh, I might be onto something here. This is new. Nobody's got it yet. And all of a sudden the fish come to it, and I hop it a time or two, and they all start grabbing it and swimming, and it's no reason for it other than they're hearing it, because it had no paint, it was clear, had no hooks or nothing, and they're eating it and swimming around and pulling it loose, and the guys are videoing it, and that was right when we first started sending videos around everybody, and everybody that first year was sending videos all around, and we need to have videos like that on our website just so people can see that more. But that convinced me that it was that the sound worked, because it's a recording of a distressed bait fish. And in 2014, that's that final last study that Texas State University did. For people that don't know, Texas State University is where we get our sound from. They go and do all the research of all the living organisms, all the fish, all of everything, and they record those true sounds. So it's not a computer-generated sound. So when that fish responds, because he hears that true sound that he's naturally hears, that triggers that response. So I took it back to these guys. I called, Fred and Basile and Robert and those guys. I said, man, I don't know. I'm a believer in this sound that y'all got, and I said, I'll come work for you guys if we can get together and put a team together of good pros and get all the baits and the styles we like, the crankbait sizes and shapes and colors, all that stuff, and we can put these sounds in all these different baits. And they said, well, that's the challenge right now. We're trying to make components and batteries and things that are compatible for all the styles of lures, and that's what they went to work on doing. And my hat's off to Robert and you guys, because y'all done so much to make the components foolproof and workable, and they fit in all these different baits. So that's what sold me on it. And you know, and then the Classic comes along, you know, and it just worked out perfectly that you know, the good old Howler right here was in my boat, and Byron gave it to me at media day because it didn't get in fast enough, and I didn't even realize how good the bait was. If it had been, I'd have used it. I might not even been 9 pounds behind. The last day I might would have only been 5 pounds behind if I'd had it the second day of the term instead of the last day. But anyway, that's the day when I caught a limit that morning. Like everybody knows, I told the truth. Caught them on another brand bait and had 20 pounds. And, you know, the fish quit biting it. Thankfully, I got down there and got it out because I knew what had happened in our seminars. I knew how they responded. I had that color that they were biting, the crawfish color, and tied it on. And first fish, second cast, I catch a 3-pounder. Fifth cast, I catch the 5-pounder that's in the commercial now where it says he choked Livingston, baby. Everybody says that. And that was the 5th fish on that bait in the Classic, that footage right there. And as soon as that happened, I knew we had a winner, and my confidence rose. And I called everything in the live well out that day except that 1 7-pounder I caught that morning. You know, and I said before, like all the people that say, you know, you caught fish on another bait, you know, whatever. Yeah, I'd have had a nice top 10 finish with the bait that I caught the fish that morning on. But if I wanted to win the tournament, that's what I won the tournament on. I caught everything else because the bigger fish were drawn to that sound after they quit feeding that day off that drop off of that rock bank, and I caught them all day long, and the rest is history. And I tell you, I couldn't even honestly even feel, I don't even want to fish with a bait that doesn't have the sound anymore in it because I'm such a believer in it. And that's why, you know, just like the other guys there at Livingston, I send baits and pictures to y'all all the time of stuff and ideas that, you know, all of us, me and Hank Cherry and Prosnick and Velvick and Andy Morgan, Brent Chapman, we all have baits that we love, and Stetson Blaylock, and we want to get a bait that does the same action and has the same movement of a lot of our old staple baits that we've all used over the years that other brands make, but we want to make them better, make them our own, and put that sound in them because that is the key to the future, especially now with all the new sounds that Robert's, you know, coming up with, having the multi-touch this last year where we got crawfish and distressed shad and a fleeing shad sound. And now we're going to have herring sounds next year. We're going to have goby sounds for up north. I mean, you can't beat the technology. And people that you want to get left behind, you're going to always catch fish on any regular crankbait you throw. But if you want to catch more fish and bigger fish, it's no doubt that the sound, the electronic baitfish sound, is the real deal.
Yeah, no, it's been helping people across the country catch more fish. And, you know, what we're really doing is taking real life biology, using technology, and packing it inside of a lure unlike anyone's ever done before. And it's something that definitely can help you out on the lake. All different types of techniques can help you get a few extra bites and get those fish feed stronger, especially when they're not, you know, when they're done feeding. So that's awesome, Randy. Well, I know you had some, some picture there of your Guntersville Craw. Had your Guntersville Craw howler there. What's some other of your favorite colors for pre-spawn fishing? I know you got a whole tackle bag sitting right there next to you.
Yeah, I mean, Guntersville Craw is always what I start with in December, from really December all the way through April, early May. That crawfish color is going to work for me anywhere. And I'm telling you, the more I fish crawfish every year, the more I realize that if I never stopped fishing crawfish, I'd probably continue catching fish on it year-round. This really always works. So, you know, I've got where I keep it on all the time. This color here, which is our Chartreuse Shad, which is kind of like the sexy shad color with that little light line of chartreuse in it right there. That color is kind of a all-around color when I'm fishing shad colors. And then let me get the Genrin. This Genrin color, this is my other, this is probably my other favorite right here. And this is a really pretty color. This is a color people don't really know what it is when they see the word Genrin. Genrin is a Japanese bait fish, and I don't know why it's a Japanese bait fish color that it works so good over here, because it's just got a shiny foil matte. It's kind of got a matte foil finish to it, and it just works really good. And that's kind of my favorite all-around color when I'm just kind of, you know, practicing looking for fish. And I keep it simple. I'll go with that. The brim colors, the true brim color. I go with this color when I'm fishing real clear water, and I'm fishing grass beds a lot or areas that have a lot of bluegill and brim. That's a real natural brim color right there. And that's the deal. So that's kind of my 4 colors. I use the chartreuse colors a lot if it gets real muddy, but for the most part, now let me show you real quick too. I had a question somebody asked me to show this tonight on these 2 baits, the Howler and the Howler Plus. The Howler Plus wasn't just another bait that we made so we'd have another Howler. It's a bait that has a whole different attitude, and it's a 66 millimeter bait, and this is a 60 millimeter original Howler. But if you put these 2 lips side by side, you see the bigger lip right here in the screen. That's the Howler Plus, and it doesn't make a lot of difference in depth. It's still an 8 to 10 foot diving bait. The regular Howlers will go 10 foot on a long cast with 10-pound line, but it's mostly like a 6 to 9 foot diver. But the regular Howler has a vibration about like this. It has a real good, tight, hard vibration. The Plus is a little bit fatter, a little bit wider bait, and it has a big, hard pull to it. It has a lot of pull. And a lot of the people out in the central states, that use the old wiggle warts, like at Table Rock and those places, y'all know that's just an old standby bait that catches them in that central part of the country really well. And this bait, when Chad helped design this bait and changed I wanted something that had that wiggle wart pull to it, that real hard pull and that real wide hunt. And this bait does that exactly. And this has actually turned into my favorite. Now I'm actually throwing it more than the regular Howler, and I caught most of my fish in the Classic at Hartwell last year on the plus size, by the way, people that didn't know that. So check out the plus size if you don't have it yet, and all the other colors too.
Yeah, you're talking about at Hartwell. We actually, at the Bassmaster Classic booth, had you playing live, streamed into the into the booth there at the Classic Expo. We were watching you catch fish live on on the Howler Plus, and it was pretty exciting. And early on in the season, we saw you last year at Hartwell covering the bank and fishing all different areas. One question that everyone wants to know is, how do you locate places to crank in the pre-spawn? I mean, what are you looking for? There's a whole lake out there. What are you looking for to target fish with crankbaits in the pre-spawn in terms of location, cover, structure, all that good stuff?
Well, that's a loaded question, I know, and it is a wide variety of answers that can be with it. But I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna keep it simple, because what I try to do is be simple, and I say every time, start with the obvious. And if anything, anybody that knows me good by now, you see me fishing riprap around bridges a lot. And I hate that it's become a thing that a lot of people realize, know and realize, because it's not a secret, but it is the obvious. A lot of times we get so much knowledge that we go out there and we got to find some, mother lode hole that's 20 miles offshore, just so we, because we got the Lowrance with a great structure scan. Now we got 3D coming in it, and we got the mapping, and of course you can find a lot of that stuff if you take time to go out there and look for it. But the pre-spawn time of the year, especially, those obvious places bass love, they love rocks, and rocks warm up, they hold heat fast, long through the winter days, these short days with the sun going down. Those morning time bites, as bass are on those rocks early, and because a lot of times the shad, the crawfish are in those rocks eating that algae. So I'm going to always go to those rocky riprap banks first, and if you don't have good ripraps on your lake, or good rocks like that, you've got to look for natural rock banks, bluffs with bluff ends. That's always where the end of a bluff goes from a real steep wall into a flat, and that is really big out in the central lakes, like Lake at Ozarks, Table Rock, and Bull Shoals, places like that. But rock that's natural will always hold heat and bait fish and crawfish, and it'll hold bass. So I always look for that first, and then main lakes, creek channel banks, things like that. If you get on a main lake type bite, I'll look for rocky points or drop-offs on the corners of going into these pre-spawning little bays and points, and going into those spawning coves where you'll have a dark line separating the shallow from the deep on those edges. That's how Hartwell was a lot in that Classic, and when I got away from the ripraps, they were on some of those drops like that heading into those spawning areas. But also rocky banks and little channel banks to last 100 yards or 200 yards of deep water in a back of a creek, and that's always little drains, as we call it, going back in those drains, and those fish go back in those places, and you look for those places that go from steep to flat all together, and that's where those fish transition and move, and that's what the crankbait bite is good for, is covering those places and helping you find out where the fish are at. And you know, the flat, and after the water gets past the 50s, you know, really from the 30s all the way to the 50s, that's my deal. I'm going to try to find that rock and those drop-offs and those channel banks. Then when it gets over the upper 50s into the 60s, I'll start getting out on the flats and covering more of those wide expanses going into those spawning areas. Then that's when they start roaming more, and that's when the Pro Ripper and the lipless crankbait bite gets better than the lipped crankbait bite. But at the same time, those square bills and the coffin bills, I really love our coffin bill baits. That's what I throw across those flats a lot because it covers water and it's got a real wide, you know, sexy wobble and 3 to 6 foot deep, and that's a good flat bait too. So that's my deal for locating them in the pre-spawn and in a nutshell.
Hey, I know it's a loaded question, but a lot of good info there. You know, you touched a little bit on the end there about moving away from the rock and into, you know, the flats. And one question specifically from our live Q&A was, when you have a lake that doesn't have a lot of rock and you're fishing mainly grass in the pre-spawn, you know, what kind of bait are you using, and, you know, really what are you looking for?
When I'm trying to fish the grass, a lot of times, you know, even a lake that doesn't have, I'm putting some notes over here beside me, so I'm trying to flip over some papers where I read through some of these questions earlier. I'm trying to make sure I keep it straight here. Like a lake like Guntersville, for instance, and Chickamauga up here in Tennessee, and places that have grass. You know, they still have rock in them, and I'll still look for that first. And if you can't find that and you don't find the bite on it, and you go for that grass bite, then remember, the grass, fish like edges. That's as simple as that. Fish like fence rows. They like hedge rows. They like shade lines. So what that is under the water, it's just like out there in land. You see a big cornfield or a big, you know, bare field, and then you got a big, you know, tall, you know, wooded area that starts beside a bare spot. You know, that edge of that hard line from tall to flat, that's where fish look for out there in the lake in that grass. So I'll get on those edges, you know, and that's the thing where your electronics are really important. Your Lowrance with the side scan, you'll side scan that with the trolling motor and see if that grass line comes out to 5 or 6 feet deep. I'm going to try to parallel that grass line and try to go down that edge until I hit an irregularity where it cuts out and back in, or a little something that's a little different than just a straight line, something that makes a point underwater in the grass that you can't really see with your naked eye till you get on it. And that's what I look for. And then once you determine if they're in that 3 to 4 to 6 foot grass, you know, and you throw the 1.5 and the 2.0, and you get those bites like that, or even shallower with the Howler square bill that's 3 to 5 foot deep. You know, once you figure that out, and they're not biting that shallow, or you got clear water and they're not in that shallow, you know, depth zone, then I'll go to that next zone, which is going to be the Howler Plus. It's going to be in that, you know, 7 to 10 foot range, and try that edge. But it's always going to be an edge, and if it's even deeper than that, I'm going out deeper and throw it even deeper diver, you know, our DM14 or our 20 or the Deep Impact. We're going to have a new Deep Impact 12 coming real soon that we've been working with. It's going to be a really good 10 to 14 foot diving bait that's real sweet, and it's like our Deep Impact 18. So just get on that edge and never get in those wide open areas that have nothing but the same old, because those places are a needle in a haystack. You gotta you know, narrow it down. So look for those contour lines on your Lowrance and get on those edges and just keep fan casting those crankbaits, and that's the way you find fish, is fan casting.
Guys, Brent, I got a quick question. You got me, first of all, you got me pumped up right now. I'm putting everything you're saying. I'm like thinking about all these different lakes and stuff. You've now got me. I'm going to be running to the Delta, fishing riprap, and going to Clear Lake, looking for those weed lines.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure everyone else is listening to this right now, just envisioning their home lake and getting pumped up about going out there. And that and you touched up a little bit on this with temperatures and stuff, but you know, I see a lot of questions. People are asking, how do they do it in their neck of the woods? How do they know when it's pre-spawn? Because I think a lot of people generally know that these fish are going to go into a heavy feed and stuff, but it's really hard to figure out when that actually happens, you know, throughout the United States. And so if I were to take you and just blindfold you and all of a sudden throw you on a lake and not tell you where you were in the U.S., what would be the first things you would do if it was February or March? What would you do to start figuring out where these fish are staging, or if they're in the pre-fish mode yet?
That's a good question, because that's always the thing that we have to eliminate quickly. When we go on a new body of water, is you got to hurry up and figure out what stage they're actually in. So a lot of your research can be done before you ever get on the water. And like we do on our tournaments and all that, our elite series, we have off limits, so you can't get any fishing information other than public stuff on the internet. But I'm always Googling. Look for a fishing report, like for Lake Guntersville. You can find out before you ever put your boat in or ever drive to Lake Guntersville. You can find out that the water temperature is 46 to 48 degrees. They're biting on the main lake points or the creek points. They're eating red right now, eating crawfish colors. Several reports will say 5 to 10 foot depth zone. You'll get a lot of good information off the internet, believe it or not, and so I'll take that to start with, and that helps me a lot, because when I already get there now, I'm rigged up and ready for 45 to 50 degree water, and I know that I'm not going to be fishing super deep, and I may not be fishing super shallow. I'm kind of putting the seasonal patterns that you learn just from your knowledge of fishing and from internet research. You take all that together and then go on the water and start searching at those places, and don't overwhelm yourself trying to fish the whole lake, because that's one of the things in our line of work in the elite series. It's so hard because you go to a big lake and you got a short amount of time, and I'll do it a lot. I'll go run around too much, and if you're not getting bit doing something, you just tend to keep running and looking and looking. Before you know it, you catch a few fish 20 miles up here, and you catch a few fish 25 miles the other way, and then by the end of the practice day, me and Brent Chapman, we joke about this all the time. You find fish 50 miles apart, and you don't have a whole lot of nothing, but you got them all so spread out that you can't fish them all, and that's the hardest thing there. So it's really good to not do that in the pre-spawn time and when it's cold water. Remember, if you catch a few fish in an area in practice in pre-spawn season in cold water, you can bet money there's a lot more fish in the area, because you're only going to catch a small percentage of those fish in cold water, because they're going to gradually come and go, they're going to turn on and turn off, and that's why working an area, getting you a big area that you can just kind of stay in all day and milking it, you're better off than trying to run around a whole lot when the water's cold. So, determine that before you ever get on the water, and that ought to help the search a little bit.
Awesome. Well, no, we're actually looking at some questions coming across the live feed, and guys are talking about snagging up the crankbaits. People have not fished a lot of crankbaits. They've been, getting them snagged, and they're afraid to fish cranks because simply they don't want to lose, a $12 lure to a piece of wood or a rock. And so I actually am going to share a little picture we had of you wearing Livingston lure earrings here. See if I can.
Yeah, I was having fun with that one. We were shooting that the other day. We've been talking so much, I decided I'd put hang the crankbaits up on my ears, and those Daiichi hooks pierced my ears too. I almost didn't get it back out after I joked around a little bit too much with it. But yeah, crankbait hang-ups, and that is the biggest deal. And I'm telling you, that is a big problem that people have, and we have it too. And I've learned over the years how to be the most efficient you can be with your bait and catch fish, and still throw it where you need to throw it without worrying about hanging it up. And a lot of that comes from just the bait design. The design of the lure means a lot. That's why not another commercial for the Howler, but seriously, when I won the classic that day, I caught 100 bass on one bait, and I never hung that bait up and lost it all day. And I'm fishing around bridges with 100-pound catfish line and cast nets on the bottom and junk that you hang up on all the time, and I never lost that bait. And in the Hartwell Classic, same thing. I fished 4 baits in the Hartwell Classic, a couple of pluses and a couple of regulars the whole week, never lost one. And because a certain style of the lip allows the bait to not hang up because of the angle of the lip, the way it turns down with the pull point like this, and that protects the hook from ever hanging up a lot of times. But when it does hang up, or if it pulls into a crack in a rock, okay, a couple things. First, the first thing you see the pros do is the bow and arrow trick, to pop your line. You pull your line here, load your rod up, and snap it like a bow and arrow, and it pops that quick slack in your line. A lot of guys know how to do that, but some people don't, and that pops loose, and it might get it loose that way. Second thing I do, if it doesn't get loose, I go to it, I get on the other side of it. Don't pull so hard on it that you just really lock it in. Wait till you get on the other side and totally change direction and pull it back the other way. That's a simple fix that happens, and you can get them loose 50% of the time like that or more. Then that doesn't work. you get over top of it, and if I'm fishing a bait that is diving shallower than my rod length is long, so my howler, usually if I get I rarely get that bait hung, but if I get it hung sometimes, this might be hung in 6 to 8 foot of water. So first I'll try to reel, drop my rod tip down, reel the rod down in the water and poke it loose. That's the one bait sometimes it'll be a little deeper than you can reach. So, but all the square bills, any of the baits that dive less than your rod is long, I'll always use my rod as a poker to reel down and poke it loose, and that gets them loose, 90% of the time. Then next thing I do is I got a bunch of these Bass Pro Shops catfish weights, the catfish bell sinker, just a simple cheap bell sinker. Buy a whole pack of them, put the big snap on it, buy a big snap, Bass Pro, put it on there. Then you keep them in your pocket or in your cup holder. On my Triton, I got these little cup holders, and I'll pull it out right there. I'll hook it on my line, let it slide down, and bang the bait, and bang it a couple times. I usually use a 1 ounce or a 2 ounce. I'll have both sizes, and that'll knock it loose. And some people make those, but you can make them cheap yourself. That's my best plug knocker. Next plug knocker I use is I've got one of those T&H Marine, I think it's Timmy Horton's money pole is called. It's a long pole that stretches out with a coil on the end. I keep that in my boat. And that if you, like when I'm fishing a deep impact 18 or some of the deeper divers that are getting down there 15, 20 feet, and you can't get them with the regular drop down or whatever. If you get in fishing line or a trot line, that's usually when you have to use a pole. Drop that pole all the way down there and poke it loose. And then the last case, I use the plug knocker very last. I hate plug knockers. I've had more plug knockers break my line and cut my line than anything in the world. So the last resort is the old hound dog lure retriever or one of those kind. I always have one in the boat, but rarely do I ever get to the point that I have to use that plug knocker. So that's my, whole string of ways to get the bait loose, but getting it loose with the rod, sliding the rod down the line, that's one of the things that every marshal that ever gets in my boat will say. When I do that the first time of the day and get my bait loose, I'll have more people say, wow, man, I never seen that before. Wow, why'd you do that? And to me it's just second nature because that's what we do, but for somebody that's never seen it, it's simply just holding your line up, between your get the guide and the reel, and slide, letting some slack in your line and sliding the rod. I can't show you because we got a small camera view. Let the rod slide down the line, and then I can get a lure loose, about 10 or 15 feet away from my boat, and I'll stretch the rod out, and I'll have it like a, doing like this, going out of my line. And people say, man, you're scared you're going to drop your rod in, but, you don't drop it in because you got the line in your hand the whole time. And I have dropped it a time or two, and I've jumped on and grabbed it. Most of the time, all of mine, the dowels are so light, they float for a split second before they ever start to go. So you got time to get them. And so that's the way I get my baits loose. But when I said back in that earlier question in the beginning about rod and reels and the style, everything that you use for the setup, that makes a big difference in not hanging up to start with, because when I'm using that graphite lightweight Tatula rod, I can feel that bait, and I feel it coming up the rock, and I feel it coming into a crack, and I can feel it before it ever gets there. And if you just crank oblivious like this and you're just whining and just, and you jerk on everything, you're going to hang up more, obviously. But if you get the right setup and you can feel that bait vibrating and coming in, and I'll start to slow it down, walk it over stuff, and walk it through stuff, feel it start to load up, and it feels like it's hanging up on a crack. I loosen it up a little bit, pop the line, it starts to come free, and that's when the EBS sound really kicks in big time too on that slow movement. The slower the bait is going, the more time that fish has to come get it and come to it. So if a fish is laying in those rocks, especially, I have caught so many like that, especially last year at Hartwell when the water was super cold. I mean, I'd reel them slow and I'd get it caught up in a crack on a rock just for a second, and I'd just be pausing it. And right as I'd be pausing it, and I'd feel it start to float up, and then you feel it load up, and they'd start pulling on there, and that's when the fish would get it a lot of times, when they hear that sound, and it reacts off that rock. So remember that. All that stuff right there, the right setup, will keep you from ever hanging up so much to start with.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic, Randy. That's something that we always lose. people always are losing crankbaits, and they're always wondering what they left at the bottom of the lake. So that's a great way to be able to get those back and get your investment back.
Yeah, you don't want to lose a $17.99 howler, man, or any of our baits. Our baits have got Daiichi hooks, Japanese split rings, the best components. We got a daggum sound chip in there and a battery. I mean, our baits ought to cost $40. And with all the stuff we've got in them and on them, just a regular good Japanese crankbait costs $20. And that's why don't anybody ever complains about a bait costs too much. I say, man, you got to think what you got here. This is like buying a car almost in your rod. You got electronics in this thing. This is a real deal, man. It's ready to fish right out of the pack. And it's going to work for you. So
I think it's great. Well, you know what? I got a question coming in from Rodney asked here on live Q&A, about bridges. Now I know we talked about bridges, but really, how do you attack a bridge when if you got current going past a bridge, or you pulling up, you see all these boats pulling up on a bridge? What is how do you dissect that bridge to be able to try and catch fish on? How do you dissect it?
Well, bridges have become a really good money maker for me over the years. I fish bridges a lot. And right when you think sometimes that you've got it all figured out on one bridge, you go to some other lake and it totally doesn't work there. Just for instance, last year at Hartwell in that Classic versus the Classic at Guntersville, I didn't catch anything around the bridge itself at Hartwell, whereas Guntersville I caught quite a few fish off the bridge pilings themselves. And so there's some lakes that they just don't relate the same to bridges as they do others, but I always fish them anyway, and I fish them the same way. But if the current is coming out at you, but facing you when you're coming up to the bridge, and the current's coming at your face, I'm always trying to fish downstream, casting upstream, bringing it back with the current. That's always the obvious, to do that first. And when I come up to a bridge, I'm always going to fish the corners, the four corners, if there is four corners on the bridge, first the riprap corners, because that's where the little eddy is going to be formed on the back side of those corners, and that's the obvious place they're going to position on the back side of that, just like that. And then the front side, they're going to position on the front sometimes. And in that Classic at Guntersville, those fish all were positioned just on the front side, nothing on the back side. Never caught a bass on the other side of that bridge that day in the Classic. They were all on the front. And I think that was because the warm water was coming out of the back of that creek from all the warm rain. All that muddy water was mixing with that clear cold water. And those fish stayed on the front of that, and they were just sitting there as the current was bringing the bait fish to them. They were just sitting there roaming back and forth and feeding in front of that bridge hole. So the pilings themselves, I don't catch fish on the pilings themselves all the time, but when I do, they're usually big fish. And there's certain bridges that after I catch one or two on, you can know you didn't catch that one as an accident. If there's one bass on a piling, there's a reason they live there all the time. They're always going to be there. So that's one thing you can always count on. Whether they bite or not, who knows? But you go back there, and I'll throw that crankbait down the side of it. And a lot of times I'll throw my shallow bait first, like the square bill, because sometimes if that bridge is 20-foot deep piling, it's still going to be fish suspended in that same 3, 4, 5, 6 foot deep place. And if it's warm, like after the spawn, I'll throw top water by the pilings before I ever throw a crankbait, because sometimes that's the best schooling area you can get. Sometimes it's the shade around the bridge. So I'll throw my Walking Boss or the Walking Boss 2, or our baits, the Walking Boss 2, especially this past year. I caught a lot on that with that big jitterbug style lip. It makes a lot of noise, and it'll call those fish up. I'll throw that first. If that doesn't work, I'll throw the square bill. Then I'll throw the howler, and then I might go all the way to the deeper bait, like the Deep Impact 18, and I fish deep. Another bait that's a big deal for me on bridges around the edges and stuff is this Schoolmaster right here. A lot of people hadn't seen this bait before. This has been a big seller for Livingston already, and a lot of people still don't know about it. I show this at the seminars every weekend, and it blows people's mind when you see this bait in the water. This is the prettiest fall bait. It will fall. I mean, it wiggles down like this. It's balanced in the center, and it's shaped like a bait fish, and you jerk it underwater like a jerk bait or a soft plastic jerk bait, but it sinks about a foot every 2 seconds, a real slow wiggle, and it'll just sit there and just looks like a dying bait fish fluttering straight down. And this bait catches them really good around bridges. I'll throw this out by the pilings, right up against the pilings, let it just fall free. Watch your line, and a lot of times the line will just jump, and you set the hook, and they'll have it, you know, cross their mouth. So that's the type techniques I look for on those bridges. The other thing is where you get on the front versus the back of the bridge. If they're sitting on the back side or if they're sitting on the front side, that's when you start to see if they're going to bite, you know, shallow or deep. And then I'll go to the jig, the Cinco. I use the Cinco a lot on bridge pilings with no weight or lightweight, the drop shot with the Cinco, and then also my spinnerbait, my hog collar spinnerbait, or the little Randy swimming runner, which is a little Blake Moore spinnerbait, spin head, kind of like Casey Ashley won a classic on. That's my good bridge bait too. So there's not really any one trick I can say you do this and you're going to catch them on the bridge every time. It's mostly a trial and error. I fish them just like everybody else. I go through all the baits, all the things until I get bit, and then I just work from there and let them tell me what they want.
Awesome! You got me pumped up to go fishing, man. I wish I wasn't here in the office. I was sitting on a boat somewhere.
No, I'm sweating myself talking about it, man.
I know now you're right next to Lake Guntersville. You can head out and go almost fishing any time you want during the off season. But Travis, you seen any good questions coming in from the Q&A?
No.
I do. I've been writing some down as they've been coming along here. I got one from Black Tip Fishing Adventures. He asked, Randy, do you tie directly to the swivel on the crankbaits, or do you actually tie to the ring? Do you use some kind of special knot?
Okay, that's a good question. No, all of our baits will have the split ring right here on them. Most of the time, most of the baits, like the Howler, has an oval split ring like this, and I'll just tie the line directly to that oval split ring. Either an oval or a circle split ring, it doesn't matter, but I do have a split ring on it all the time. Some people, I know a few guys that prefer snaps, and I've never been a big snap fan a lot myself, but if you like a snap, you know, take the split ring totally off and put a snap there and then tie it onto a snap if you'd rather have a snap. But for me, I feel safe with that split ring, and I know that split ring allows it to have a little bit of freedom and movement, and it's more dependable sometimes. I think a snap sometimes can come loose on you if you're not careful, and I just have a lot of issues with worrying about a snap, so I like the split ring.
Great. Yeah, I know people, guys asking what kind of knot, what knot are you generally using out there tying to your crankbaits?
Yeah, as simple as anything. I tell everybody, same knot. I use a polymer knot for everything, and there's no reason that you've got to tie any other knot on just about any bait, honestly. The only one that would argue with me on that is Aaron Martins. Me and Aaron are buddies, and Aaron will wear me out about a polymer knot, but he'll come over to me and Brent Chapman at the campground. He'll grab our crankbait and pull our line and just snap it. He's got big gorilla hands. He'll just snap, and it's like, I can't believe you tie a polymer knot. That's the worst knot in the world. You shouldn't tie a polymer knot. I'm like, man, the bass doesn't have hands like that. They can't pull it that hard. The polymer will always work if you've got good quality line. That's another big deal. If you've got some cheap fluorocarbon that rarely does anybody even have bad fluorocarbon these days, but like years ago we had a lot of bad fluorocarbon, and people tried to say, oh, you can't tie a polymer knot with fluorocarbon, but that was bull. It was all about the bad line. That's what was causing that. So when I started using Gamma, 7, 8, 9 years ago, however long it was, you tie a polymer, wet it as you cinch it down every time, and I hadn't broke a fish. I really ain't broke a fish off in years. I honestly broke one off. So it works for me.
That's great.
Now, and braided line too. The dye with J braid and dye with Samurai, those two braid lines. I get a lot of people that say, can you tie that polymer with the braid? Does it slip? Well, it doesn't slip at all. The single polymer, I don't even tie a double. Some guys will tie a double polymer, but a single polymer with all the braid I use, never have a problem.
That's great. That's awesome. No, that's something, guys, you use any, this is a question right off the live Q&A, do you use any braid to fluorocarbon, in your crankbait fishing, or are you mainly just using that for like finesse tactics, drop shot, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I don't use any braid really on any of my crankbaits, just because I've tried it and I seem to miss or lose fish or take it away from them a little more. The only exception to that is I'll use like 30 or 50 pound, 55 pound Samurai with the Pro Ripper sometimes with a lipless bait, and that's when I'm fishing heavy grass, and that's when the fish it's warmer water, they're biting good, so they're inhaling the bait. after you rip it out of the grass, and sometimes the braid is just to rip it free. And when I use that, I use a medium action rod, the Tattooeless 7-foot or 7.2 medium action, and that allows the softness of the rod, but also at the same time rips it free from that grass. I'm getting some echo. Where's that echo coming from there? You hear that echo? Is that coming on your end or not? Somebody else's sound? I'm hearing my voice echo back.
Not coming from me, Randy. It might be Travis on your end. I don't think it's on your end either.
I think I got things muted pretty good.
Just started doing it.
Yeah.
Messing my ADD up when I'm trying to answer the question. I can't answer good because it's.
That actually might have been your Aaron Martin's impression coming back to get you.
That's what it was.
Let's see here. I'm all good on my my sound here is all good with me.
Okay.
You see anything else coming in there from the live feed, Travis?
Yeah, well, I'm seeing a little some more questions about color. Randy, earlier you mentioned that you really like red in the spring, but almost year round. Red, a great all-around color. People get confused sometimes. They're just overwhelmed by how many colors they see on the shop wall. Is red something that's kind of a staple that they should, kind of a starting point?
It is, and that's why at the beginning of the year, like I said, usually December is kind of what I say is a beginning for me. December, even though it's the end of the year, but December kind of starts to pre-spawn, like I think, like at Gunnersville, red, the Gunnersville crawl color, from December all the way through, really all the way into May. But I won't even throw another color hardly at all from December into early March, and then I might swap up and use some shad color, the Chartreuse Shad color, or something like that. But especially the dirtier water. The dirtier the water is, the better they like that crawfish color. And then as I get into I'm still hearing the echoing back on me. I don't know where it's coming from. But the other color I like is brim color a lot, and I'll change to the brim color, kind of like the true brim here, and then the Ginren, which is kind of brimish also, but the Ginren and the true brim, which is a natural color. You can kind of see through it. It's a good clear water color, but it has a lot of green look to it on the back, and that looks like those perch and bluegill, and that's what they like. After they get off the beds, get out there and start roaming in the grass, or they're in brim beds and stuff like that. So I'll go from crawfish to shad to brim, and then I'll use brim and shad, Chartreuse Shad and the shad colors, all of that post-spawn into the early fall, and then I'll go back to crawfish for the year, and I'll mix in some chartreuse and some bright color for muddier water, and that's about as simple as how I keep it.
That's great, Randy. Well, you know what? We're going to have to take one more question and then wrap it up. I got security kicking me out of the building. Hate to cut it short here.
We got some action. All right, Nick, tell them no.
You guys want a live throwdown on Livingston Live, me versus security, to get me out of the building while we're here live with Randy Howell. Well, Randy, one quick question coming in here from the live feed is, how with EBS sound technology are you matching the hatch? With EBS multi-touch, what those sounds, what are you changing those sounds to? Original, shad, craw, silent, what really are you trying to mimic with each of those sounds?
Right off the bat, the regular original EBS sound, which is the stress bait fish sound, that sound will fish and catch them anytime, anywhere. But as we've gotten more advanced with the more specific sounds, for the specific forage type sounds like the crawfish sound, so anytime I'm using my gunners for crawl color, that crawfish color, I've always done it on the crawfish sound. And I've watched the bass in tanks at the seminars. I do it every seminar. Last couple weekends, I'll go from the show the regular EBS sound, the stress shad, and then I'll go to the crawfish and watch the way the fish react, and I'll change it to the real intense fleeting shad sound being chased, and then you'll see the way the fish react. And there's funny how certain tanks and certain bass react differently to them, and it's just like that in real life. And underwater, everywhere you go, the fish hear those sounds naturally, and they react differently to all of them. So I like to match what I'm fishing with. That's why I'm excited about the multi-touch and the Bluetooth stuff that we've got coming. It's not been perfected yet. Robert's working on it a lot, and it's going to be a time coming soon that we'll have the Livingston app that I can go over there and get the sounds and choose any of those 30 sounds and put blueback heron sound in a bait for the blueback heron lakes. And I can go and put my goby sound, and out west you can put the sound in for the hitch out the hitch bait fish and some of the smelt. All those fish make different sounds. And when you get to that point coming real soon, you can use those sounds. It's going to be lights out on those places that never heard that before. So I'm excited about that. The other thing we're looking for, guys, look forward. Right now all of our baits, tournaments, the team Livingston series in the blue package bait. That's our multi baits with 3 sounds. We've got a new series coming right now. It's going to be a green package called the tournament series, and this is going to be like a $12.95 retail bait versus the $16 or $17.95 bait. It's going to have 1 sound, but that 1 sound is going to be specific to what that color is. So if that one bait in the package like this one bait, if this is in a green package, it's going to have crawfish color on it, and crawfish sound in it, so you won't have to change the sound, and that allows Livingston to sell it a little bit cheaper so more people can afford to have more. So that's a neat thing that we've told them to do, and they're listening and looking. So look for the tournament series. Green package will still have all the same quality hooks and everything else, but it'll have 1 sound, and it'll be specific to that color bait, so it's something that's really cool.
Oh, that's good. That's great, Randy. Well, you know what? There's actually 2 things here before we leave that everyone listening should take advantage of. And one of those things is our Livingston Lures Fish with a Pro sweepstakes.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone out there that's listening, you're actually able to win a fishing trip with Randy. Talk a little bit about what you guys are going to do on the lake. Where are you guys going, and what are you doing?
Well, it's going to be, of course, it's going to be on Guntersville, because why wouldn't you want to come fish on Guntersville with me, and we talk about all the stories of winning the Classic. I can even take you on the simulated boat ride as I'm going up the lake, and I make that turn back, and I'll show you exactly how it happened. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be fun, and we don't know yet. I told them that we were going to set it to go in February this month. Right now coming up, but it's really not the best time of year with weather and all that. So I told everybody at Livingston, I said, let's wait. Let's get the sweepstakes trip away. You win the fishing trip with me, you'd probably rather time it out to where we can line up to get the best time to go fishing and make it easy for getting off work, a month or 2 months away from now, however that's going to work. But it's going to be a great day. You can be 1 or 2 people. If you win it, you can bring your dad or your brother or your son or daughter, whatever you want to do, and I'll take you out there, man. I'm going to show you all about the lake. I'm going to show you about all the baits, and I'm going to make you a believer in EBS technology, because if you don't think so, I'll let you throw one without it, and we'll throw ones with it, and then you'll really be a believer. So that's what it's going to be. You're going to catch a lot of people.
That's great. The way that you can enter is by texting EBS to 313131. You can easily just jump on your phones right now, EBS to 313131, and that will actually be able to enter you there in the contest, and then also in the YouTube description there has the link you can go and enter. And then also, we can talk a little about a special thank you to everyone watching is you get 25% off all Howler series lures.
That's a deal.
Yeah, Randy going to show them up there in the screen. We get 25% off any Howler series lures. Just use the code Howler, HOWELLER.
You gotta spell my name right. You want to spell my name right if you want a discount. That's a good deal, man. You don't see them going to sell very much like that, so it's a good time to go ahead and if you're waiting, if you were skeptical, get them right now because the deal is good. Yeah,
25% off. Just use code Howler. All your Howler series lures, your Livingston Howler DMC, DMC Plus, the new Howler Deep Plus, the big 30. Randy, do you have a big 30-foot diver there? They're on display.
No, I'm waiting on y'all to send them to me. Nobody sent them to me yet. I still got them in the water, man. They're so new. We can't hardly get them. I got them at Bass Pro Shops the other day, and I almost bought one, and I said, I'm gonna just wait because I don't need one yet. I've got a couple ones that are all beat up that were the prototypes, but I don't have the production run yet. So that's a 25 to 30 foot diver. You talk about a bait that's going to catch them on Guntersville this summer. If we end up going fishing during the summer on this sweepstakes trip, you'll get to see the deep plus in action because it catches them. It gets down there deep. You can throw all your line off your Daiwa reel. It's so big, and you throw it on an 8-foot rod, and man, it's a deep diving plug. I tell you that.
That's great, Randy. Well, you know what, everyone? We appreciate everyone watching. Once again, one last time to be able to enter to fish with Randy Howell, to be able to get a trip out there on Lake Guntersville with the classic champ himself. All you got to do is text EBS to 313131, or on our YouTube account there, you can go on the little link there below, and below the YouTube live stream, you can enter live through there. You can actually share it with your buddies and get more entries, and maybe even take one of your buddies on the fishing trip. So
yeah,
we really appreciate everyone for watching. And any last words, or any last words, Travis?
Yeah, if you guys don't have any buddies, I'm always free too. I'm pretty available, guys. So if you guys need a buddy to go on with you, I'm here.
Travis can come out and film the whole deal for you if you want to, man. You do that for free with me, Travis. Yeah. And let me say a special thank you to everybody tonight that helped us kind of share this. You know, we reached out to all my other sponsors, and I'm very blessed to work for great companies for a lot of years now. You know, Daiwa, Triton, Mercury, Costa Sunglasses, Hog Collar and Lunker Lure, Gary Yamamoto Plastics, and Lowrance Electronics, Bass Pro Shops, Power Pole, Gamma, Daiichi, Blakemore, Do It Molds, Rig Wrap, and the ceramic cutters that I cut my braid with. Man, just so many great sponsors. I'm thankful to have them. We're looking forward to representing everybody in that classic March 4 through 6. Y'all be ready. We're going to have some big action.
Great, Randy. Well, thank you, Randy, so much for sitting in with us on Livingston Live. Travis from Lucky Tackle Box and their show Lucky Tackle Box Live. Actually, who's
look at that. There's my pretty Robin right there. She's been over here making sure I did everything right the whole time. You'll be seeing us on the. She's the moderator. She'll be on Love Seat updates real soon. So y'all be waiting for that. So anyway,
that's great. And you know what? Actually, after you do some Love Seat updates, we can get you on Lucky Tackle Box Live. But we know you're going to be at the Bass Pro Spring Classic.
Yeah, that's the only reason we couldn't do it that night, but we're going to do it another time. I tell you that. I'm looking forward to being on Lucky Tackle Box, man. We're going to have fun.
We're going to track you down, Randy. We've got a great deal with Livingston this year. We're going to be featuring Livingston a lot of times in the box. And with LTV Live, it's a great way for our customers and stuff to connect with the pros. So we're definitely going to get you on the show one of these times, and I think you'll be able to explain a little bit more about some of these different lures and stuff. Because this is one of these things that, you know, the EBS technology, the more you learn about it, stuff like that, the more you become a believer, the more confidence you get because of what this can really open up for anglers. So I'm excited, and you know, thanks a lot for having me on, man.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, not a problem, Travis.
Appreciate you coming, Travis. Look forward to doing a show with you too, and y'all, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope I've helped you catch if you just catch one or two more bass than you would have caught, it was worth it tonight. That's the way I look at it. So y'all, I'm excited about the season. Thanks for following us on Randy Howell Fishing on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I guarantee you, get you some Livingstons while they're on sale. I promise you, you won't be sorry. You'll catch a lot of fish, and you'll be on the revolution with me with the how to get better and using electronics. I guarantee you.
Yeah, most definitely, everyone. Like I said, 25% off all Howler Series lures. Just the code Howler, HOWELLER. If you can spell Randy's name, you can get 25% off on a Livingston lure. And you can also enter to win a fishing trip with Randy. All the links are on our YouTube page. And then once again, everyone, check out Lucky Tackle Box and Lucky Tackle Box Live on, the 20th of this month? Travis, We're going to have Byron Velvick.
Yep, 20th of every month, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So it'll be 8 o'clock, you guys out in the Central time zone.
Perfect. Well, once again, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Livingston Live. We hope you have a great night. And have a good night, Randy. Have a good night, Robin. Travis, keep it classy over there on the West Coast with Lucky Tackle Box Live, Team LTB. And we will see you here in a month for Hank Cherry talking jerkbait tactics here before the Classic.
I'll be there for that, too. Y'all better be watching. Cherry's going to teach you how to do the jerkbaits. We got the new jerkbaits. You're going to like them, too.
Oh yeah, I'd show you guys some prototypes, but they're actually just about to hit the shelves. So guys, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Oh, Randy's got a little preview over there before the show ends here.
Come in, they're all painted.
You're not allowed to do that on the internet, Randy.
That's the Table Rock Shad right there. That's going to be the classic winner right there, that color right there. Hank got them painted that color just for me for this classic, so I'm excited about that. I think Prosnick might have some, but don't send them to him until the last minute, all right?
Awesome, boys. Well, hey, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good night. Travis, Randy, till next time.
God bless. Thank y'all. See you.
Good night, guys.